Over 7 million different animals inhabit our planet.
I think, we should get across to the listeners why care about not just the Eastern Diamondback, but venomous snakes in general.
Yeah, I mean...
Because they're so critical.
Well...
What can they teach us?
Awesome. You watch the video, and she's literally herding her little rattlesnakes to, not leave the den. They kind of...
Many species are in crisis and need your help. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.
Welcome to the All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
Angie, I'm missing Florida today.
Oh, I don't know, Chris. It was pretty steamy here.
That's what I miss. It's so cold. It's 0. How about that? It was 0 this morning, Celsius.
I was going to say, which is really not that bad when you have spent many a winter in Chicago.
Oh, I would
In fact, 0 degrees Celsius seems like a balmy day when you are used to much worse than that. So
probably you're a Michigan
there.
Girl.
I know. Buy some polar fleece. Invest in some hot cocoa.
I literally have 3 shirts on right now. I have my thick socks on. I'm a weather wuss. I'm sorry. I'm a weather wuss when it comes to cold
I'm glad
weather.
you said it because that's what I was thinking. I was just being Midwestern nice.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I know. I'll get used to it.
Our northern listeners are like, what?
I know. Our Canadians and everybody else. Well, we just had this big Antarctic blast coming through the country, so South Island.
Well, maybe we need to cover some species from the Antarctic so you can learn how to adapt to cold weather the way that they have.
I know. I remember it just made me think of Dr. Kim Getz when she interviewed her and she sent me some of her pictures with her penguins down there. She's in this full getup, with the coats and stuff, but. Yeah, that's what I look like walking outside.
Yeah, she's got the good gear. I will say, I know you're cheap like me. You don't like to buy nice things, but investing in some maybe not expensive, but some higher quality polar fleece, maybe North Face or something like that, it does really make a difference.
Yeah, I've got some family coming in a couple of weeks, so I'll tell them because I miss Florida sometimes. I really, really do. But, I'll get used to it. You watch the Kiwis around here, shorts, t-shirt, barefoot, walking around like hobbits.
Yeah. My favorite is in the spring in Chicago when it gets to 40 and everybody's out in shorts and t-shirts.
Oh, God. I would die. I grew up in California. I was spoiled rotten. But anyways, I'm more like this species we're covering today, the Eastern Diamondback Rattlesnake that needs the sun.
Though, this is, yes, definitely the Eastern, but there are species of rattlesnake where I grew up in Michigan, the Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake that does fine in the wintertime because they learn how to hibernate. So you need to maybe look into some hibernating.
I mean, the podcast can go on hiatus.
Let's not get crazy.
Yeah.
So, today we're talking about the snake in my neck of the woods here in the southeastern United States, the Eastern Diamondback Rattlesnake.
Yeah, I know. It was it made me think, and this podcast is going to be great. Please stay with us because snakes are so misunderstood, and Angie are going to get into that. But I was sitting there thinking, researching all this stuff. How many rattlesnakes did I walk by in Florida? Because, you go hiking all the time. You go kayaking. You go out in the woods. My backyard of my house, was kind of backed up to a park there in Florida. How many rattlesnakes?
Lots of woods.
Yeah. How many rattlesnakes did I walk by and never knew it? Never knew it.
Well, that's because they have no interest in you. They're way more scared of you than you are of them. You pretty much have to step on one or grab one for them to respond to you.
Yeah, even that.
They're not seeking you out. They don't want anything to do with you. They're hiding. They're staying away from you. Yeah. And so, you might have walked past some. You might not have. A lot of populations are declining.
That's true. Well, it's interesting you say that, Angie, because it's, you want to stay tuned because one of the things I looked up was, a lot of people have fear of rattlesnakes. I would say most people have fear of rattlesnakes.
Or snakes in general. But
snakes in general.
Then you throw in the venomous part and it probably takes it to a new level, I'm sure.
Right. And so I was interested in how many people are bitten by snakes each year, and then how many
Mm-hmm.
people die each year to snake bite. So we're going to cover that at the very end. It's I've got a lot of good data, so you want to stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and I think you'll be shocked by the number.
Yeah,
I'll-
yeah. Now I will
know
say
I
this
would.
this week we have a great interview with Dr. David Steen from the Georgia Sea Turtle Center, which is based in Jekyll Island, Georgia, just up the coast from Angie, a few hours. Been there before.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
beautiful. It's a beautiful place. And so he did a lot of snake research, and he's doing a lot of work with sea turtles right now too. So we talk a little bit about that. He's kind of a big snake expert. He's got a blog, things we're going to talk about in the interview. So we were lucky that Angie secured the interview with him.
Oh, yes. I've been
Yeah.
stalking him on Facebook for a little while now.
Yeah.
I felt really blessed when he was like, "Of course, I would love to do an interview."
Yeah,
But yeah,
he
he's
was great.
a very knowledgeable scientist that also obviously promotes a lot of animal conservation and animal education and animal awareness for
Mhm.
reptiles.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of groups out there, of course, to talk about mammals and uh, the bigger ones that seem to get a lot of the attention. But I really fell in love with the fact that he's a reptile guy and he knows his stuff and he promotes, he promotes conservation, promotes science. He's
Yeah.
a scientist. And so, yeah, I'm sure you'll talk about it or maybe link to his Facebook page on our show notes after
Absolutely.
the interview. But yeah, follow him. He's always, it's like a great education, the stuff that he posts, all the different, because he, of course, follows a lot of other reptile people.
Mhm.
And so he's a great wealth of information for all of our
Yeah.
reptile fans out there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he does a lot of research. That's right now he's talking about the sea turtles, and I guess this time of year they're in good old Florida with the warm weather, but all the turtles are coming up to the beaches now, laying eggs and things like that. So it's a great interview. The one paper I know you were going to talk about it, and I saw this. It's funny before I saw your notes about him, but his one paper that came out last year, interspecific combat observed among viperid snakes. And I was like, I want to talk to him about that, which we do. And basically,
cool. Yes.
yeah, the battle between two different types of snakes they're fighting, and he talks a little bit about this paper he published. So stay tuned for that. It's a great interview. We were very lucky to get him. Now, so Angie, we're talking about another snake. In episode 13, we did the Burmese python, which is endangered in Asia, but invasive in Florida, in your backyard.
Oh, yes.
Our
Very
backyard.
invasive in Florida. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you said up in the panhandle, like,
Yeah, they're moving north. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, we're moving away from the constrictors, right, which is the python,
Yes,
to the venomous snake.
Moving to a local southeastern United States, a local venomous snake, and it's a pit viper. And,
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, Chris, what I didn't realize before starting to research the Eastern Diamondback Rattlesnake was that it's the heaviest in the
They're
Americas. It's the largest rattlesnake. Technically, it's not the longest venomous snake, but in general, it's the big bad boy of rattlesnakes in North America, or in the Americas in general. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they think. I mean, it goes back and forth, but the longest snake is the king cobra.
Okay,
Can get up to 18 feet or almost over 5 meters. Like that's huge.
That's silly. I can't even. I don't even. Yeah.
I can't wait till we cover them. I'm obviously we're going to cover them at some point. And 18 feet, Angie. I was like, I didn't know king cobras got that big.
I didn't either. I think that must be like that's like the rare. That's like the rarity.
Yeah. I think the average is like 13, 14 feet, but still, that's huge.
And with the Eastern Diamondback Rattlesnake, there's reports of 8 feet or 2.5 meters.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes if they're kept under human care, they can be smaller.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one specimen in 1946 that measured
over 8 feet, but it weighed 35 pounds. It was the heaviest. Okay. So it's the heaviest. It was the heaviest venomous snake ever found. Right. So that's why they think it can be some of the heaviest. The Gaboon viper is heavier on average. So that's almost 19 pounds, 8.5 kilograms, where the average on the Eastern Diamondback is about 10 pounds or 5 kilograms. Their average length is about 3.5 to 5.5 feet. So
yes,
they can get really big. but on average, they're not that big, compared
Right.
to, a king cobra, which is
Mhm.
13 to 18 feet, but they don't weigh as much. So anyways, yeah. And they're called the stout bodied viper, right? Because they are so big and they're just fat and stout,
They are chunky. At my husband's zoo, they have one that's not as big as we're talking about, but we were just commenting, me and Xander, the other day, that he was a little chunky.
they feed him well.
Too many mice. Yeah. But they're a gorgeous snake. They're strikingly beautiful. Their color pattern consists of like a brownish yellow, brown gray. It can be olive too, dark green, but it's overlaid with a series of 24 to 35 like brown to black diamonds, hence their name.
Right.
And then the diamonds have blotches outlined with a row of cream or yellowish scales. So we'll put some pictures on the show notes, but they're just, they're that plus the rattle. They're a very iconic and gorgeous snake.
It's just, and I know we always say the herpers out there, the people that love the reptiles, a shout out to Derek if he's listening. He was there at the Santa Fe Zoo. He's a big one that I used to always see out doing science education for schools and stuff. They are beautiful. Like those colorations, the patterns. I just never really paid attention to it, but they are gorgeous. They're gorgeous.
Oh, yes.
They're just beautiful animals. Yeah.
And yeah, Chris, like I had mentioned before, they're definitely found in the southeastern United States, but anywhere from like North Carolina, of course, into Florida, the Florida Keys, along the Gulf Coast, into southern Alabama, Mississippi, and southeastern Louisiana.
Yeah.
And like you said, they do where we live in Gainesville, where you used to live, and now I currently live. It's very there's forests, like a pine forest, and the woods, and they love scrublands, coastal forest, pine, flatwoods, and they do like moist areas such as wet prairies, but they do pretty well in general. Like in abandoned farms or overgrown fields. So, and here locally too, they like to use the burrows made by the golfers and golfer tortoises in the summer and in the late winter. So
yeah, they're like me. Like we were just opening with how cold it is. They like the coastal southeastern United States where it's nice and warm and sunny most of the year. Then they go hide their little heads when it's cold.
Yes, when it gets down to like maybe mid 30s Fahrenheit here.
Yeah, that's still cold. That's still cold to me. It's just still cold to me.
I feel like I've only seen frost on a few occasions, very few occasions.
Well, Florida does get cold. Like it dropped into the teens a few times. I thought I was going to die, but it's fine. I need to just live in Hawaii. I mean, it's perfect weather.
Now you're talking. In Hawaii, it's such perfect weather. They don't have heat or air conditioning.
Yeah, it's like
they're like we're so awesome that we don't need to have either of those.
I didn't grow up with air conditioning. You're kidding me. I mean, internal California gets hot. It's a desert, but I lived on the coast. Like it was never. 80s was hot. That was a heat wave.
Did you have heat or air conditioning though?
I think we had heat, but we rarely used it. It's just
okay. And air conditioning you didn't need?
No, I didn't. I didn't discover air conditioning until I moved to like Alabama.
Okay, because you were were you in San Diego?
Yeah.
Area.
So
that's pretty perfect. That's about almost as perfect as you can get.
Yeah. It's just like I said, like that one time in high school, it was 38. I thought I was going to die.
Yeah, it's just too expensive. Hawaii is expensive to live to.
Yeah. Well. Anyways, these snakes don't need it. So I think the big thing, Angie, with this episode today is, we have these fears of snakes and sharks and popular culture. So I think it's unfounded. And, I'm not going to lie. Like the first time I saw a rattlesnake, I about freaked out too, because I was like, oh my God, if I touch that thing, I could die. That's what went through my head.
In the wild?
Which isn't true. Yeah, I was in the wild.
Okay.
Yeah, it was when I think I don't know if in the another episode I was talking about when I observed wild horses and I was driving around with my truck and we were doing a census and there was a big snake just sitting there on the road and we kind of just crept by it and I look right out my window and it's right there and I'm like, oh my God, which is, I should have just been like, holy smokes, I see a rattlesnake. How awesome is that?
Yeah, I'm
Instead,
like
I was,
super jealous.
fear.
I would like look for them in Michigan and couldn't find them because their numbers,
Yeah.
unfortunately, are
so low.
plummeted.
But I think, we should get across to the listeners why care about not just the Eastern Diamondback, but venomous snakes in general.
Yeah, I mean,
because they're so critical.
Well, historically, snakes have been an important part of human culture for, thousands of years.
Yeah, the Bible on, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I found this an interesting tidbit for a cocktail party. But the timber rattlesnake was actually considered for the United States national animal.
Huh.
Obviously, it didn't win. The eagle won.
No.
But so, I think that's beside. There's just, I think, a huge history going back for respect, fear, love, hate, if you will. I don't like the H word, but all of it intertwined. For thousands of years. So there's that. But fast forwarding to present day time, I think one of the really important roles they play is that they eat rodents, right? So they help control those populations. And we all know that rodents can often carry diseases. And we don't want rodents in our houses, things like this. So those are just... That's, to me, a very kind of simple reason. Like, I feel like people that don't like snakes probably also don't like rodents. They have general fears. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I understand, and I do respect that people probably wouldn't want a venomous snake on their property. But I know in my neighborhood, there's been a couple coral snakes around. And, yes, they're venomous, but they're about as shy and small as you get. So, but I know...
Is it...
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't it true that with the coral snake, you have to let them gnaw on you to really get their venom?
I don't know if it's quite that much, but yeah, you pretty much have to pick them up and bother them. But long story short, in my neighborhood, what I consider to be nice neighborhood educated people, I know that they kill them when they find them. And so... And that really frustrates me because there's a lot of good groups out there, and we'll get to them in the podcast. But of course, in any local area that you live in, there's probably other ones. But they'll come safely remove a snake that's venomous, or any kind of snake, obviously, or pest if you want to. So there's tons of other options out there, and especially if it's not a venomous snake, if it's just a little garter snake or something. Snake, they're eating rodents. They are. They're doing their job, and they don't want even the rattlesnake. Trust me, they are way more scared of you than you are of them. But so that's so they eat rodents. But another thing too is that we're talking today about venomous vipers, rattlesnakes. The venom from several species, such as the dusky pygmy rattlesnake, have been used for research and developing medications. For instance, captopril is a blood pressure medication. It's like an ACE inhibitor. It came from the South American pit viper. So, and then there's another one called integralin, which is a blood thinner. It can be used during heart attacks and open heart surgery to help save people's life. Once again, that came from the dusky pygmy rattlesnake venom. And I just read, too, that more recently, the University of Southern California, your old stomping grounds, has been researching southern copperhead venom to treat breast cancer cells.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, and we'll get into we'll touch on the venom and how it works and what it does and the potency and all these things in a little bit in the podcast. But the main point is venom is still really understudied. And I think that if we kill off all these venomous species because we're scared of them, or we don't like them, we're probably doing ourselves medically a disservice as we learn learn more about the potency and how they could be used to help treat human diseases. And my last point for why to care about snakes, Chris will put some on the show notes, but they're really good moms. And I'm going to talk about that later in the later on during the behavior. There's if you don't like snakes and you don't like rattlesnakes, or a friend doesn't, I encourage you to watch this video that we'll put on the show notes about a rattlesnake mama protecting its rattlesnake babies.
Yeah, which is crazy. It's just crazy. It's crazy to think about.
And this is, we're at the very tip of starting to understand how social and intelligent they are. And yeah, I mean, I would actually at this point be totally fine if somebody compared me to a rattlesnake mom. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah,
I would be like, I'm doing a good job. Not to mention they really only have their young for like 3 weeks. So
yeah, I know. Trust me.
But yeah, no, and I'll get more into that and later. But yeah, just they're when you really start to learn about their behavior, and you can, I think, appreciate more that just because they're a venomous animal doesn't mean they're evil.
No, they're not. It's just it's the culture, and, like sharks, I think they're breaking the shark culture with like Shark Week and things like that. I think we need Snake Week. I think,
Chris, that's like the most genius idea you've ever had. And I've known you for a long time. You've had some really good ideas, including this podcast. And so, okay, maybe it's the second most genius idea, because the first would be the podcast. No.
No, the first will be accepting you into my lab,
that's
right?
True. That's true. Yes.
10 years ago.
Yes. Well, you didn't really have a choice in that. I think I was like emailing you every day, like, can I have a job now? Can I get in the lab now?
This girl will not leave me alone.
But yeah, no, I like the idea of Snake Week. We need to make that. We need to make that happen, man.
All right. We'll talk to David and some other people that we know.
Yeah.
And see if we can promote it, because it really is. They're so critical to the ecosystem. I mean, if people get anything out of this podcast, each species we cover has such an important critical niche.
Oh yeah.
And snakes are, like we talked about poison dart frogs, which is an episode we don't talk a lot about because it was so long ago. But
it was one of my favorites this day. It makes me laugh.
Oh, I love them. I love poison dart frogs. But they're so critical to the ecosystem.
Yes.
And, we're taking these big chunks out, and it's just not healthy. It's not healthy for the environment. And so I think we just need to break a lot of these myths.
Well, and I think a lot of species that we talk about in the podcast, including the rattlesnake, have an upward battle because of habitat fragmentation and basically reduction of loss of habitat because of developing. Yeah. I mean, Florida's just booming in certain areas. So they already have it up, and then climate change. Okay. So they already have this crazy uphill battle with all this stuff. So when you add stigmas on, like, oh my gosh, if I see one, I want to kill it or whatever, it's just really not helping them at all.
No. It's really sad, actually. One of the things I really did in preparation for this pod today was I really went down this rabbit hole of all the different species of snakes. And,
cool. 'Cause I did.
I know, but this was where my homework came in. Yeah. It's like,
good. There were so many of them. I kind of got a little overwhelmed.
Oh, it is.
I'm like, oh.
Yeah. It's wholly overwhelming. Now, snakes, the suborder is serpentines. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's over 3,600 species of snakes. One of the articles he covered was the 5 new snail-eating snakes discovered in Ecuador. So they're still finding snakes all over the place. And it's, they're again, a critical part of the environment. Now, within snakes, there's 20 recognized families, but then there's 520 genera or separate genus. So it's getting, then you have all the species. So it's very.
That's kind of where I was like, I'm just going to go look at videos of mom rattlesnakes.
Yeah. So I'm going to start in the 520. Number 1 is no. So what I did is I went and looked. Okay. So with that many, it obviously too much to cover in this podcast. But I did cover and look at the families, and I started kind of getting into this. So within the families, there's some really small ones, like wart snakes in Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia. I mean, there's 3 species, but that's its own family. So not a big one.
They're so different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The boas, there's 61 species within the family of Boidae.
Those are my faves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the elapids. Okay. So there's 359. So sea snakes, and this is like the king cobra. or the cobras.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a big one. Now, the vipers, there's 341 different species. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I didn't know it was that high.
Yeah, there's a lot. So the Americas, Africa, and Eurasia. Now, this one I thought was kind of funny. The Colubridae is just your typical snake, and it's your catch-all. So it's like the catch-all category, which is there's 1,866 species. So if it doesn't fit
You
in
gotta
these,
love science.
I know.
I don't blame them. They got tired. They were like,
There's too
okay.
many of these. So there's the catch-all category, and it has half of them are in there. So like your corn snake falls into this category.
Oh, I used to work with corn snakes. I love them.
Yeah. So, and obviously these are snakes all over the world, except Antarctica, some islands, Ireland, and Angie.
I feel like the way you're looking at me, the answer is New Zealand.
Yeah, we don't have snakes here. No snakes. No snakes in New Zealand. So my poor son, he's really upset because he wants to
clearly
pet
it's too cold for them, right? It's
yeah, it's way too cold. We have penguins. We literally have penguins on the coast. So, yeah, the Viperidae family. So this is the family of venomous snakes.
We're getting closer, team. Hold on.
Yeah,
yep, we're getting there.
Yeah. So the Viperidae, what's unique about them compared to the other families is they have hollow fangs, or they call them solenoglyphus. So I hope I'm saying that right.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, solenoglyphus. This is pipe grooved fangs, and they're just really advanced venom delivery system, and it's really cool. So the way this works is the fangs can be about half the length of their head, right? So they're big. They're big fangs, right?
Yeah, I think aren't they some of the bigger fangs per
I think
vipers,
head.
basically?
Yeah. They're
head,
huge.
yeah.
They're
Okay.
huge. Now, the way it's like this whole spring system. So when their mouths are closed, obviously the ligaments and things in the mouth relax and the muscles relax. So those fangs are folded up against the roof of the mouth. When their jaws open, it's almost like a spring, and they spring into biting position, and then that allows them to bite their prey. So it's this whole like spring loaded mechanism. It's all physiology. It's all, muscles and tendons and ligaments and things like that. Now, what was interesting is their venom's usually less toxic compared to some of the others. So when they bite, the venom delivery system, the venom glands are located behind the eyes in the upper part of their jaw, and it just travels down this hollow point fang into their prey. Now, what's interesting too is sometimes with the vipers, when they bite humans, they don't always deliver venom. Sometimes they have a dry bite. So it's more of a warning that they don't want to inject venom in there, because obviously it's a resource for them. And
sure. Well, and that's the thing, is they know we're not a prey animal for them. That's why they're not ever seeking us out.
No. So it's a warning, really. Now, their venom is less toxic compared to some others, and I'm going to get here in a second which ones are some of the most toxic snakes in the world. But in viper venom, it has proteases. So there's 15 enzymes which break down proteins, right? And then there's things like metal ions, amines, lipids, amino acids, polypeptides. So it's just like a nasty cocktail.
It's definitely a nasty cocktail. And not only is it nasty, it's complicated. So if you think of like a bartender having to make a drink, and not only would this be nasty, but this would probably take up 20 or 15 different bottles, right? Because there's just so many different types of toxins in it. And it's just for layman's term, venom is typically categorized into neurotoxins that affect the brain, and then cytotoxins. So most snakes don't usually have one or the other. They, like I said, they have this cocktail, like Chris said, and it's complicated. And of course, the Eastern Diamondback is no exception. And the neurotoxin part of the venom is going to interfere with your normal functions of your nerves, and the clinical symptoms can be like paralysis and respiratory distress. Where a cytotoxin is going to destroy or otherwise impacts your cells, so cyto cells. And for the Eastern Diamondback, the cyto the try to see, I got it. And for the Eastern Diamondback, the venom is primarily cytotoxin. And so it typically will cause severe tissue damage and maybe impact your neuromuscular junctions. And there's some mycotoxins in there too that cause muscle wasting.
Yeah, what I was reading is for us, it's not necessarily deadly, but it's just incredibly painful. So
Right.
Yeah.
No. I mean, definitely for an adult. And there's one gentleman described it as an intense pain like 2 hot hypodermic needles, spontaneous bleeding from the bite site, intense internal pain, bleeding from the mouth, hypotension, weak pulse, swelling, discoloration of the affected limb, and severe pain.
Right.
And sometimes even hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
But it should be noted, especially in the southeastern United States, there is an anti-venom.
No, you say that, again, we'll get to the stats, but it's, from what I read, especially in developed countries, United States, other places, they have a lot of that anti-venom or the medication to counteract a lot of this. So,
Correct.
That's why, obviously very survivable. Now, Angie.
Do not try sucking the venom out of the wounds. Okay.
No, that's like the worst.
If you get anything out of this podcast, obviously, number 1, conservation message.
Yeah.
Don't kill snakes. But number 2, just seek medical help instantly. Okay.
Well, yeah. And you're supposed to put a tourniquet on if it's a limb or something to slow down the pumping of the blood. But, you have to know what you're doing. You don't want to, don't bite or cut that stuff. Now, the venomous
You know what,
snakes.
Chris?
Yeah.
We have a rule at my horse farm.
Yeah.
Another thing you can get from take-home message from this podcast. Because it's very rural where I work at this horse farm. And my little boys go out there a lot. Xander and Zachary. They're 4 and almost 2. They're very, very busy. Yeah. And the rule at our farm is you don't put your hands anywhere without looking with your eyes first.
Yeah, that's true. That's
and if you can't see whatever it is you're grabbing, then you either maybe use your feet or a stick, or obviously you come get me. Mm-hmm. So you don't just grab stuff. You always look and listen. Yeah,
that's true. That's good. It's little tips on, how to prevent human wildlife conflicts.
Exactly.
Now, I looked up, I was curious because they're saying the vipers don't really have the most toxic venom. And I was like, okay, who does? And I know of some snakes that are pretty toxic, but this one, the inland taipan, is the deadliest snake on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you know where that's from?
Indonesia.
No, you would think. That's what I thought. Taipan, right?
Yeah.
Australia.
Oh.
Yeah, everything in Australia will kill you.
Well, you better tell Ashley to be safe. Isn't she there right now?
Yeah, she's coming back in a couple days. So, yeah, you have, not only will the wildlife kill you in Australia.
Yeah, they got some rough stuff in Australia. But they're all awesome, outback cowboys. So
yeah, they are.
They have
Australia. To be. I love the Aussies. I just, being a Kiwi now or adapting the Kiwi lifestyle, I gotta poke fun at them. But yeah, the inland taipan, it has the deadliest venom on Earth. Now, a lot of these other ones are sea snakes, which I knew sea snakes are pretty deadly. Then you get down to the coastal taipan, which is another, terrestrial, not a sea snake. The kraits, so in Southeast Asia, there you go. And then more Australia. I mean, I look at this list, the top 10 list, it's like half of Australia. The brown snake, the black tiger snake, the mainland tiger snake, the Western Australia tiger snake, the deadliest venom on Earth. So yeah, just be careful when you're in the outback. But again, these snakes are going to avoid you as much as they
I
can.
think these snakes too, in general, live in places where if you are in that area, if you find yourself in the outback, you're probably going to be with a guide, and you're probably going to be extra careful to begin with because you're in the outback. So I think that's some of it too. Is here in Florida, it's a little tough because for me, walking through the woods, growing up in Michigan, mm-hmm. I knew there was a possibility for rattlesnakes, but there had been by then the population was so declining because of people
Right.
that I was never concerned. And so I do have to change my thinking a little bit here in Florida, where we obviously have a couple, well, more than a couple, a good amount of venomous snakes. And actually, how many do we have? That's a good question. I don't
There's a few dozen. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I would say 10 maybe if I had
at
to
least.
take an
There's a
educated
bunch.
guess. But anyways,
Cottonmouth, copperhead, yeah.
yeah, so I have to, change my thinking a little bit. But if anything, it's just being more respectful for nature and being more conscientious. And yeah, I mean.
Yeah, no, I mean, I grew up in Northern California with my dad in the summers. He was a high school teacher, and in the summers we'd go camping quite a bit. And, I just never ran across any of them, but I knew they were up there. I mean, there's tons of rattlesnakes in the mountains in California because it was so remote. So they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And you've like, even Dr. Steen told me the other, when I interviewed him, you probably have walked by so many venomous snakes that you just would be amazed because you can't see them.
I love it.
Yeah.
Man, I would love to know my number. Probably not too many when I lived in Chicago. My average, my annual average probably went down.
Yeah, probably.
I walked back. I walked past some other things that were probably
scarier,
way scarier, or way more. I don't like to use the word scary with snakes, but way more dangerous than snakes that I didn't even know. So
yeah,
but I always had my husky dog with me late at night, so he was my little guardian angel.
Yeah. So the vipers, you have adders. And then the pit vipers are rattlesnakes, cottonmouth, gaboon viper, green vipers, and horned vipers. So rattlesnakes are under that family. And these are stocky snakes with short tails. They have that distinct triangular head, which is one way people can identify venomous snakes. But I did read some non-venomous snakes have evolved to have kind of triangular heads.
Oh, smart.
Yeah. Yep. Now, they have keeled scales, and I was like, okay, what's a keeled scale? Which is interesting. And what that means is it's not smooth, but there's a ridge down them, so when you touch them, it's rough, right? So when you think of a constrictor snake, if you've ever held one, I know you have. They're very smooth, right?
Very smooth. Definitely, definitely not slimy. Okay, that's a myth. No snakes are slimy. Constrictors are very smooth. Yeah. And
these are.
I have never touched a rattlesnake, or a viper. So you're telling me it's rough?
Yeah, it's rough. So like shark skin too. I know, touching shark skin, it's
maybe it's not rough. It's probably just not as smooth.
On the snakes? Sharks?
Yeah, I just read that it makes their skin appear dull and not shiny.
No, it's they have keeled scales. Yeah.
I guess that's what keeled means.
Yeah. I looked it up.
Okay.
I Googled it. I Googled this
one.
He Googled
it, folks. Yay.
Okay. So then all these snakes have coloring patterns for camouflage, things like that. All right. So getting into the rattlesnakes, Angie. So we started with 3,600 species, all the 20 families, the 520 genera. Now we're down to rattlesnakes, and they're part of
There's a fair amount.
Yes, a lot. 36 known species, up to 70 subspecies.
That's when I started just watching the mom and baby rattlesnake videos. I was like,
there's a lot.
I am going to totally depend on my partner Chris to just do this part because the videos
I did not
are
realize
way more fun.
There were that many. I didn't know there was that many. I honestly did not. I would have never guessed.
Chris, I had no idea. And I was overwhelmed. I'm like, this is now. I did jump in to read through them all, and there was many that I hadn't even heard of, which clearly
I'll get to the list. Yeah, I got a list
my
right
background's more in hoof and horns, so it's not surprising. But in the same instance, I was impressed. So get to that list. Let's hear it.
Okay, so these snakes, rattlesnakes, are in the Americas. So they range from Canada to Argentina. So Argentina has a couple species down there.
So they can do well in cold weather as well.
Yeah. Now the majority of these species are in the American Southwest and Mexico, which I thought was cool. So
that is cool. Yeah.
My old stomping grounds.
Your old stomping grounds, yes.
Mexico. I gotta love Mexico. So
Viva la Mexico.
Oh yeah. The World Cup was we're recording this during the World Cup of 2018. And Germany totally croaked, and Mexico's in there, so I'm excited for them.
I just
So-
say go Colombia.
Yeah, Anna. Hey, Anna. And my other Angie, back there at home, she's a big fan of Colombia. I love England. That's my team, but because the U.S. never makes it. Anyways,
Exactly. Someday.
Yeah, someday. So the Eastern Diamondback is Crotalus adamanteus, and I'm sure I butchered that a little bit, but here is some of the list of the species. There's so many. It's the Mexican ground pit viper, the Yucatan ground pit viper, the copperhead. Okay, so you have the southern, the broadband, the northern, the Osage copperheads, bunch of them. Cottonmouth, Florida cottonmouth, western cottonmouth, eastern cottonmouth. The Mexican jumping pit viper. I want to see this one. There's a few jumping pit vipers.
Yeah, that one I don't want to bump into, but yes.
Yeah. The palm pit viper, the forest pit viper, the lancehead, the toad-headed pit viper.
I just had no idea there were so many. I love it.
Oh, a bunch of these lanceheads in Brazil and Martinique and some of the islands around there. You've got, oh my God, more, now we're getting to you said the dusky rattlesnakes, the diamondback rattlesnakes, the desert sidewinders. The list is just going on. I'm looking at this list. I mean, and I'll obviously link the list in the show notes, but there are, the southwestern speckled rattlesnake, the Mexican black-tailed rattlesnake, Arizona black rattlesnake.
I'll be talking about that one later in behavior.
Yeah. So then you get into more pit vipers. This list just keeps going. Pygmy rattlesnakes, more vipers. So it's an exhaustive list. You get the idea, right? That's the idea. There's a ton of them. Sorry. I just looked up after looking at that list, and Angie's got a snot rag in her nose. I'm gonna take a picture for the podcast.
I have a head cold from all the traveling, and I'm trying to not sound too congested. And it was a very long list, so I thought it was time. It would be an appropriate time.
At least you weren't asleep.
I was listening intently, trying to make sure that boogers weren't running down my nose.
God, this is so fun sometimes. All right, we're running out of time. We've already talked forever. All right, evolution in 10 seconds or less. We covered this in Burmese python. They evolved from lizards about 175 million years ago. The Eophis underwoody small snake in southern England is one of the first ones they found. Again, 170 million years ago. First venomous snake was in Africa. The elapids, so your sea snakes, cobras, found about 25 million years ago.
Long time.
Yeah. Now, we already talked about the largest snake, Titanoboa. Go listen to that episode.
Yeah, that's a fun segment.
Yeah, it was a good one. Yeah, it's a good one. The largest venomous snake was in Greece 4 million years ago. Leophis crotalioides was about 13 feet long. So not quite as big as a cobra, but weighed 57 pounds.
Yikes.
26 kilograms. Yeah. It was huge. Yeah,
that's like golden retriever. Yeah.
So anyways, that gives you an overview. We've talked, I think so far talked about, why we want to conserve these, where they fit in, but some of the life cycle stuff, they can live up to 20 years in captivity, but that's not in the wild. It's probably half that just because they, humans have had such a huge impact on them. Now I did find this. I couldn't find what a male snake was called or a female snake. What is a group of rattlesnakes called? This one's great.
Oh, wow. I love this part, but I didn't study it. So
yeah.
A consortium? No.
No. What's that thing that you have going around your house, that little vacuum? What's that called?
A Roomba.
Yeah, it's a Roomba.
Really?
A Roomba. Yeah. It's called a Roomba.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we'll get to their social stuff here in a minute. When Angie gets to the behavior. So males are bigger, their tails are thicker than the females. They're usually active more in the morning and the evening. Remember, these are ectothermic. I think we talked about that in the other snake one. So they're not cold-blooded, but they're ectothermic and they just need outside heat sources to stay warm. Right?
Yes. And like you mentioned it, my word of the day for listeners out there, which my 4-year-old knows, he loves it. The diamondback is crepuscular, which is a fancy word So just, it's a fun word to know. And it just means active in the evenings and early mornings, like Chris said. But I wanted to give it a shout out for the word of the day because it's a fun one.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Now, they travel 2 to 3 miles per hour. It's not very fast.
No.
4 or 5 kilometers per hour, in short bursts, so you can easily outrun them. I mean, they're not going to chase you down.
No, gosh, no.
Yeah. Now, they're the pit vipers. Why are they called pit? Not just the Viperidae, but pits. It's because they have pits, these loreal pits on the side of their head between their eye and nostrils, and it's an infrared sensing device.
Mm-hmm.
So they can detect heat sources, like say a mouse versus the background leaf litter or whatever when they're hunting. So they do really well in low light. That's why, early evening or evenings and mornings is when they can really see. I mean, obviously they have good eyesight, but then also their other sensing organ is the forked tongue, which again, we covered in the Burmese python, how they use that chemical sense. That's what they're sensing smell with their forked tongue.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, one of the things I read about them was they call it the most evolutionary advanced snakes on the planet. These pit vipers.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to talk about them because.
Now, I did want to get into a little bit on the rattle.
Yes, I learned a lot about the rattle.
Yeah. So I obviously it's a warning and especially to predators, and they're hollow segments made up of keratin.
Keratin, common theme.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, rhino horn, pangolin scales. It's fingernails, hair. Don't use this for medicine. There's nothing in there. Jeez.
No.
And looking at some of the physiology, they have these shaker muscles, right, that work together to vibrate the tail that can fire 50 times per second.
Holy shnikes.
Yeah, those muscles are firing so fast.
Wow.
And because it's hollow, that's where it makes it so loud. And I didn't know this, but every time they shed their skin, they add a new rattle.
Right. Yeah. So when babies are born, they have like little buttons. And then as they grow, they shed their skin. Each time they shed, they create another segment of the rattle.
Right.
And then that goes on through their adult life.
Right.
But I don't necessarily think it's a thing that you can tell an age of a snake. And this is maybe a snake expert could clarify this.
Yeah.
Because the rattles break off, right? Sometimes.
They do, yeah.
So it's not like, it's not like it's
rings on a tree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So therefore it's shed this many times in its life.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Totally correct. You don't necessarily can use that to age an animal because they do break off. But I would imagine if you saw a pretty long rattle, that's a older snake, right? Plus they're probably huge
in size. And I guess I don't know with rattlesnakes in general how frequently they shed their skin when they're adults. Of course.
Good. No, it's Angie, you're just like so perfect today. You're just like I didn't even need to ask you to say that. That was my next thing I was going to bring up. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to know why they shed their skin. Now, I will tell you, Angie, you know this. You're shedding skin right now.
Yes.
We don't want to think about it, but all animals shed their skin. I mean, dust is mainly dead skin cells.
And in my house, it's mostly like dog and cat skin cells. Let's be real.
So we don't want to think about it, but that is physiology. That is nature. So we're shedding our skin 24/7. Reptiles are different. They can't really shed it all the time. So they shed it all at once. And with snakes, it's called ecdysis.
Nice. I did not know that word.
Yeah. So what happens is they grow within that skin and it does stretch to a point. But then when it hits that point where it can't stretch anymore, that's when they will shed it. So a new layer grows. Then they kind of get a hole in the tail and the head, and then they kind of slither out of it through the headpiece. And whenever it's removed, it's like actually inside out. Whenever you see shed snake skin. Also, they do this. It helps remove parasites. So that's one of the benefits of doing this. And they do it about 2 to 4 times per year. Now, it's going to depend on diet and environment, things like that. So I imagine those northern snakes, when it's colder, they're not eating as much, stuff like that. Sure. They're not going to shed it as often as, say, the Eastern Diamondback, where it's warmer most of the year, and they get pretty good diet of mice and other things.
Yes,
So there you go. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to take care of non-venomous snakes during my tenure at the zoo, and corn snakes, ball pythons, rainbow boas, and it was always a very exciting time for me when they would shed. They do go a little dormant, not as interested in food. You don't want to handle them for our education animals, and so it was really a learning process for me is how to care for them, because that's another message to I know Chris and I have promoted a lot, especially in the Burmese Python podcast. But reptiles, keeping reptiles as pets, or even in a zoo setting under human care, is even though they don't eat all the time, once a week, twice a week. Once a week, once a month, twice a month, whatever it is, they still require a lot of care as far as the temperature, the humidity, the moisture, all. And then if they're when they're shedding, you have to provide stuff for them to help them shed their skin. Like in nature, they would probably brush up against a rock or a tree or something. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So there's a lot that's not it's not for the faint-hearted, and so I typically don't recommend them as pets unless you're going to go obviously
all the way.
All in and do your education, because clearly that's how, sometimes invasive species end up where they shouldn't, when people just let pets go.
And they live, like I said, they live 20 years. So
it's
that's
serious.
a 15 to 20 year commitment, which, if you go think about yourself 20 years ago, you're a baby. So think about what I was, but getting out of college and how life changes in 20 years. There's a lot of things that happen.
Well, my best instance is my horse Rosie, who is just turned 32, and I've owned her for like 25 years. And so if you would have told me when I was a teenager that I would still be like taking care and paying money, like real money, that I clearly don't have from this podcast. So but I mean, I'm all in. So for me, it's a lifelong commitment, but thank goodness I'm all in. I mean, because a lot of people aren't. And so that's the thing. And there's websites out there that can help you if you have any pet, whether it's a dog or a gerbil or especially a reptile, that can help you decide if that is the best pet for you.
Right.
But the shedding phenomenon is just, it's really cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's just a thing reptiles do. These snakes, the Eastern Diamondbacks, there's a lot of things besides humans that will hunt them: coyotes, eagles, hawks, owls, pigs. Remember we talked about pigs being resistant to venom? Raccoons, skunks, possums, other snakes. So like the king snake, that's the one that goes out there. But what they eat is they're ambush predators, or they'll go search out burrows like you were talking about. But eat mice, rats, small birds, other small mammals or animals. Usually the prey die pretty quick. After they bite and inject venom, their prey usually dies pretty quickly. But if they do run away, then they just use their nose and tongue to find them. They're fine tracking it basically. And so a rattlesnake too can strike as far as 2/3 from its body length. So if it's going to be a 6-foot snake, it can strike up to 4 feet. So it gives you a little bit of definitely some reach for sure. But that's the thing, is like if you're a human walking past in the woods, you're not on their radar as food, so they're not gonna lunge 4 feet out at you. They're gonna stay hidden away and hope that you don't bother them. And but yes, if you're a little bunny rabbit or a mouse, don't go too close. Look out.
Look out.
Now the snakes, you always people wonder. Watch them eat. They swallow head first. That way the arms and legs fold back on their prey. Their gastric juices are very powerful. It digests everything, flesh, bone, pretty much everything. I read the optimal digestion for them, temperatures around 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 to 29 degrees Celsius, which would be so nice if it was there right now here. And they eat about every 2 weeks. Okay. And they do have to drink, so like they'll submerge their head and open their jaws to suck in water.
I used to love to watch snakes drink when I would take care of them. I just I don't know. Clearly, I'm a weird behavior person. But I'm like, they're doing something, because snakes don't really do much. However, that's a little bit of a misnomer because I love giving them enrichment because, if you put something new in their exhibit or their area, whether it's a log, a toilet paper roll, a ball, like we used to use boomer balls, they come check it out. They move, it would really increase their activity. And they definitely have personalities. At least the snakes I worked with, I was always really, really enjoyed, learning from them and realizing that, there's a lot of animal going on in there. There's a lot of personality. They have things they prefer, things they don't prefer. Some are more friendly than others. So, but And speaking of behavior, Chris, too, when I worked at the zoo, a lot of times we would give them little pools. Some like to swim or soak. And the Eastern Diamondback Rattlesnake is a great swimmer. They don't typically climb. They have been spotted crossing stretches of water between the barrier islands and the mainland off of the Georgia coast and the Gulf of Mexico. Mm-hmm. So great swimmers. Cool, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now, in regions with really cold weather, not really cold, but moderately cold weather, the diamondbacks will hibernate in gopher tortoise or mammal burrows, stumps, trees, and then on warmer winter days, they'll come out to bask in the sun. And just to keep in mind, too, like Chris had already mentioned, with communication, if they are threatened, they will rattle their tail. And however, to the contrary belief, they don't always rattle their tail before striking. I mean, hopefully you hear the rattle and then you would know to maybe something's in that stump or whatever. But probably depending on if they're hunting, they maybe don't use the rattle. I'm not really sure about that behavior. Right. And the thing that I really want to touch on, and I think I brought this up in the Burmese python.
You did.
But I'm gonna bring it up again because I think it's because we actually are talking about rattlesnakes today. There has been some work recently done on Arizona black rattlesnakes by a woman named Melissa Amarello. And she's actually the founder of a group called Advocates for Snake Preservation, which is an organization committed to improving human tolerance of snakes and to peacefully coexist with them. So a lot of what we've been talking about. And they can be found on Facebook. Check them out. They're out of New Mexico. She uses like science education to basically help get rid of these myths that snakes are bad and horrible and we should kill them. And they can be found at www.snakes.ngo. And the reason I'm bringing her up and bringing this up again, because I did more research on it, her studies have demonstrated using time-lapse cameras to document interactions of these Arizona black rattlesnakes. And she's found that, yes, some of them are loners, because typically snakes are solitary, except for during breeding season. But others can be really social, and some even prefer companies of a quote-unquote friend, for lack of better terms. Mm-hmm. And in her studies, she found that some snakes will spend a good amount of time together, up to maybe even 50% or 57% of the time. And that also rattlesnake members of families can maintain close ties. Mm-hmm. In her work, she observed maybe many of the babies that would end up in the same den of the mothers that it came from, even though like the fowling season. So it would come back.
Right.
And,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so the other thing that Melissa and her group found that's really, really, I just want to highlight today, very near and dear to my heart, is that black rattlesnakes, Arizona black rattlesnakes, are super moms. And so first and foremost, it's super cool, Chris. I think we touched on this last time, but rattlesnakes, so including the Eastern Diamondback and this black rattlesnake that I'm talking about, they are ovoviviparous, so they don't lay eggs. They give live birth. And this is
crazy.
It's so cool, right? Yeah. So this is a mode of reproduction in animals which embryos develop inside the eggs, inside the mom's body until they're ready to hatch. And they don't have a placental connection with the mother, but they receive their nourishment from a yolk sac.
Mm-hmm.
So the females do that. So they're just like me, kind of for the most part, give live birth, and they're super moms. By the time they give birth, the poor mama rattlesnake hasn't eaten in weeks or even months. And then she basically, after she gives birth, which I know Ashley and I can vouch for this, is all you want to do is eat a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
After she gives birth, she doesn't eat for another couple weeks to give attention to her newborns. And she is this dedicated supermom for up to 3 weeks, taking care of these little kids. I don't know what baby rattlesnakes are called, but she has to protect them from extreme temperatures, from predators, from wandering off like kids do. And so Melissa and her group has these videos that we'll put on our show notes, but it's time-lapse video. And you can see a typical day of a new rattlesnake family. And they highlight this black snake. Her name is Cat Mama. And she is just awesome. You watch the video and she's literally herding her little rattlesnakes to like not leave the den. Like they kind of leave and then she comes back and she says, "Oh no, Junior, get back in here."
Yeah, come back. That's crazy.
And the other behavior that's been documented is they will lay on their mom, which as a parent, right? Like, my kids are like always on top of me. And so now a lot of this research is just evolving and they don't know why they do it. Maybe to get heat from the mom. Mm-hmm. They're not sure. But regardless, super mom. And like you said, with the rattlesnakes are the most evolved pit vipers. I think you were speaking more physiologically, but I think from a behavioral point of view or social or an intelligent point of view, we're just starting to begin to understand and highlight some of the neat stuff that they do. And they don't move fast and furious, and they're probably not as fun to watch as a ferret or my goodness, otters, right? Like they're not.
Yeah, I know.
They're not going to be that fun to watch. But with her time lapse video, she could really see these behaviors and in repetition to prove that the moms really play an active role. And that's
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So for me, that's kind of my repro and behavior in a nutshell is that, I mean, they're just, there's so much we don't know about them. And I think it makes them a lot more relatable for me.
Yeah.
Personally. Yeah. And just to close the behavior section too, here is a quick little clip of what a rattle sounds like. So if you see one, don't panic. Just know to look with your eyes before you put your hands anywhere.
Yeah, and back away. Yep. Yeah, so that's the warning sound. So you want to stay away from that. Mm-hmm. Now, so with conservation, this particular rattlesnake is least concern, but the population is decreasing. Sure. So in the Eastern Diamondback, they estimate there's about 100,000, but thousands are killed each year for their skins or these dumb rattlesnake roundups, which David and I talk a little bit about on Thursday. He's actually doing some work in education and trying to end these and turn it into like more of a conservation and education event. But going out and just killing all these snakes is not, it's just dumb. It's dumb.
Not cool.
It's dumb.
Not cool.
No, it's not cool. It's horrible. Now,
and it's part of the reason where I'm from, up north, Michigan, Illinois area. Mm-hmm. The Eastern Madagascar rattlesnake is now currently threatened.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if there was roundups there, but I know that people would just always kill them for their hides, and now you barely find any.
Yeah. So, a lot of just a lot of stuff with them, and habitat loss has caused a decrease in the Eastern Diamondback, about 10% loss in the last 3 generations. So, they're facing a lot of pressure. The good news is, like we said in every episode, there are people out there doing conservation work.
Right. And and the first group that I want to highlight today is actually local out of Gainesville, and it's called the Rattlesnake Conservancy. And their mission is to advocate for the protection of rattlesnakes in their habitat through research and education. And they can be found at www.savethebuzztails.org. and of course on Facebook as well. And we'll put links on the show notes. But this group is awesome. They go across the country, and it's definitely locally here in Florida. I see them at a lot of family events and, of course, outdoor events, trying to educate people and solve problems of basically the rattlesnake and or human-pet conflict. So they do all these outreach programs, educate people about snakes and their ecosystem, values to humans, and what happens if you do bump into a rattlesnake, what you should do. So lots of boots on the ground. I love that I see them out interacting with kids like Xander's age. And on their website, savethebuzztails.org, you can find lots of articles about you can find a lot of articles about rattlesnakes. And of course, like Chris mentioned, about the cons and the rattlesnake roundups and why we need to educate more people on how that's not a good idea. Mm-hmm. And then they also will help relocate snakes in your area. And they train you how to do it humanely and who you can contact. And they do venomous handling training for field technicians. Tons of resources on their websites if you're a herper or just in general have interest about careers. And of course, they have rattlesnake adoptions and fun events, which locally is great for me because they have things like Get Buzzed for rattlesnake conservation, which is, a tired mom needs that once in a while. A good fun, a good fun night out. So check out the Rattlesnake Conservancy. These guys are doing great work and they have a lot of information on their webpage, and it should help you out too. And then secondly, I want to highlight a group called Center for Snake Conservation. And they can be found at www.snakeconservation.org. And they also have a good presence on Facebook. Now, the Center for Snake Conservation is to also promote conservation of snakes and their natural ecosystems and to implement positive change in human attitudes towards snakes. They have a really multidimensional approach. Of course, they use education to change people's minds that snakes aren't bad. And they support science and conservation programs to drive action. And they work locally and across the globe. And their main conservation strategies that they employ are habitat protection, which is key, education, they get their local community involved, and then they do citizen science for snake counts.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so this might be a group if maybe you're like not into rattlesnakes or something, if you're just more into constrictor snakes. This would be a good group to check out to see how you could partake in snake counts and maybe looking into, and identifying snakes that are in your local area and helping us learn more about populations and their numbers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I remember, we had that rat snake that was hanging around our chicken coop eating some chicken eggs. I could have went in there and said, hey, we have a rat snake in our backyard, and we just left them alone and, they did their thing and, it was great. Now, before I get to how many people each year die to snakes, a conservation tip. I think the first obvious is don't buy any snakeskin items, snakeskin boots, wallets, anything like that. Just don't support this trade.
Yeah, not cool.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, don't support them. It's again, we got to choke off the demand, and the supply will go away, and people won't go out and kill these animals for their skins. They're beautiful animals. Enjoy them, at a conservation center, or people like Corbin Maxey, who has, animals that he takes care of. Derek, our friend from Gainesville, who does a lot of snake education, go to those events and look at these animals and enjoy them that way rather than paying for something like this. Now, one thing that, I always I'm trying to promote this carbon neutral life. This was something easy. I read this and I was like, oh, okay. That if you have a loose gas cap or a missing gas cap, you can lose about 80 gallons of gas lost per year. So One thing we can all do is check your gas caps, make sure they're tight. If you don't have one, get one, replace it, please. But due to evaporation, if those things aren't tight, you lose gas, and again, that's one of the number one drivers of carbon emissions is fuel, right?
And people are probably like, who loses their gas cap?
Angie.
This lady. Yes, this lady lost her gas cap.
Replace it immediately, Angie.
And and it was so ridiculous where I thought I had a car problem.
Yeah.
And I took it to the mechanic and he's like, well, we could start by getting you a gas cap. Like that would be.
All right, fix it. All right. All right.
Yeah. Mom brain. What can I say?
What happened before you had kids, though? This was normal behavior for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, kids are a great excuse for me. But no, I've always been class klutz or class clown.
We love you,
it's been going on for a while. Yeah. And true confession, I think I've, at least on 2 occasions, I've driven away from the gas station with it still attached.
I've done that. Like, I think, I did it one time, like a few years ago. Freaks you out.
Oh, good. Okay.
It's the worst.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I did it once. Too.
Oh, good. Well, I would like to know how many other listeners have done that so I don't feel as bad. But it has happened to me twice.
In the last
and I
week?
think it was before kids. No, we have a Prius, so we don't go through gas that much.
So getting to how many people are bit by snakes in the U.S. So your chance of dying from a snake bite in the United States, and probably most Western countries, or westernized or developed countries, is 0%. It's almost 0%. And that's because we have excellent care, right? You get bit by a snake, get an ambulance or call the health professionals right away. And
I really want to highlight that. I mean, you just said 0%.
Yes.
Like, think about that for a second before you kill a cute little venomous coral snake.
Yeah. So 1 in 50 million people in the U.S. will die each year to a snake bite. 5 to 6 people per year die. Now, most snake bites are because people are messing with them, handling them wrong. You know, they're messing around with the snakes. You know, I'm sure there's the really rare occurrence. Somebody's out in the middle of nowhere, gets bit and can't find help. You know, that's ultra rare. Now, in the United States, 1 in 37,000 people have a chance of being bit by venomous snakes. There's about 7,000 to 8,000 snake bites per year. Okay. So it doesn't mean it's like ultra rare to get bit, but most of those are people messing with snakes. That's not all venomous snakes. That's just reported snake bites. So if I messed with that rat snake in my backyard, it probably would have bit me. And then I could go, I got bit by a snake, and I'd be added to that statistic. Okay.
Gotcha. So the statistic doesn't isolate venomous bites.
Now, but again, 5 to 6 people. That's it. So I looked into this. I was like, okay, well, what are some of the other things? In the United States, sharks, 1 person dies per year being attacked by a shark. Alligator, 1 per year. Bears, I have a healthy respect for bears. 1 per year. Now it gets fun. Spiders. How many people die from spider bites? 7 people per year. It's probably, some of this is allergic, but now here you go, Angie. Cows. We just talked about cows with Cape Buffalo, your cute little fuzzy things. How many people die per year because of cows?
Definitely more than shark. I know more than shark bites.
20.
For sure.
20 people a year in the United States are killed by cows. Dogs. 28 people per year.
Yeah.
Bees, wasps, hornets, 58 people per year.
Wow.
Okay.
That's probably more obviously allergies, right?
Yeah. But so when we talk about snakes and how scared we are of them and all this other stuff, 5 to 6 versus bees and wasps and stuff with 58. Ashley would love that. Now, some other things. Last year, over 37,000 people in the United States died in car crashes.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Heart disease, the number 1 killer in the United States, killed over 600,000 people. Okay. So why are we killing snakes? Why are we demonizing snakes? We should be demonizing, like you said, a hamburger, cheeseburger.
Hey,
that kills more people.
After you give birth, you are allowed to have a cheeseburger. All right. But no, you should not eat a cheeseburger every day.
100,000 times more likely to die by eating cheeseburgers than you are from a snake. So they deserve our respect. They deserve our love and our conservation efforts. So hopefully,
absolutely,
the listeners got something out of that.
Yeah. And if you aren't a snake fan and you made it this far, I mean, definitely, check out the Rattlesnake Conservancy or the Center for Snake Conservation and just see what these people are doing. Or go to your local zoo and maybe start reading about them. And a lot of a lot of the zoos will have education hour where they'll bring out a corn snake or a very easygoing, tiny little, non-venomous snake, and where you can touch it and look at it. And I think you'll hopefully fall in love the way I did, because I can't really say, I wasn't a natural herper. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I started working with herps, snakes, turtles, iguanas, other lizards, bearded dragons, that I really started jonesing for the reptiles and all their amazing subtleties.
Right. So, they're amazing.
So so learn more and watch some of these videos with the cat mama rattlesnake, and see if you can at least maybe not fall in love, but have a new appreciation for them.
Yeah, and just for us, send in those questions, and send this podcast. Angie's stuffing the thing up her nose again. Thanks, Angie.
We gotta wrap this ship up, Chris. My nose is draining.
I know. We send this podcast to a friend. Ask them to listen. I'm sending it to my mother-in-law because she loves snakes. She hates snakes. She's like scared to death of snakes. So I'm going to send this and
this is a good test. Let's have her listen to it and see if she's
still going to hate snakes. I know her. She's a Texan, man. She's there. I know where my wife gets her stubbornness, man. Texans, gotta love them. I love Texas. All right. Well, I know you're heading off to Michigan here in a couple days. Have a safe trip. We will be back next week.
Yes, thank you. And I can only hope to be so lucky to see an Eastern Massasauga.
Yeah. Look out for the snakes in that blueberry farm.
Yes, you always do. You use your eyes first, and then your hands.
Look. All right. Well, we'll have a good trip, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Chris. Have a great night. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah. See you next week.
Listen, learn, share. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.